When we are talking to a number of investors, be they investors or lifestyle buyers, the question of acquiring the property and are mortgages available for our buyers in the UK? And the answer to that question is absolutely yes, there are mortgages. Obviously they come with certain criteria. Pre the great crash we had, somebody was able to buy a property with a 25% deposit. Now most banks, when you're buying a vacation home and you are renting that home out to third parties, you are looking at a 35% deposit and you're looking at a 65% mortgage. What will be required by that bank to approve the mortgage? Typically, they will look for 3 months bank statements. They look for maybe 2 credit references, credit card company, some people that you've been paying ongoing bills in the UK, your pay slips. If you are self-employed, they will look from a letter from your CPA or your accountant to qualify the exact salary that you are receiving. So again, working in the United States and working here in Central Florida, there's a process. You can certainly work directly with a bank, but that bank needs to understand you are a foreign buyer. Not all banks work directly with the clients very well. Working with a mortgage broker. So if you talk to one bank, you're talking one-on-one. When you deal with a mortgage broker has access to more than one bank. He may deal or she may deal with 5 or 10 different banks. And when you sit with that mortgage broker and tell them what you're trying to achieve, certainly a good interest rate, most likely the lowest down payment. Bear in mind when you're dealing with banks, the criteria for that loan can change week to week. The mortgage broker, that's his business. He sleeps, eats and drinks mortgages. He should know what's going on in the marketplace. So my advice would be, it'll cost you a little bit more money because obviously he does not or she does not work for free. They will have to be paid a fee, but normally they do not charge you a fee until they deliver the loan. Interest rates, at the moment, you're looking at probably about a 4 to 5% interest rate if you're buying a home to live in. If you're looking to buy a home to actually rent it out where it becomes a commercial transaction, I've seen loans at the moment quoting 5.5% interest. You're here in Central Florida, you're buying your new property. In working with a mortgage broker and a bank, one of the criteria they will want is an appraisal. That is an extra level of reassurance to you that the house you're buying for $200,000 is worth $200,000. Again, that mortgage broker the bank will want an appraisal or an evaluation on the property to make sure what you're buying is worth the money you're spending. That appraisal, I know we sold some properties about a year ago. They bought off plan. The contract price was $190,000. When they came to close on the property 10 months later, they were worth $220,000, and they hadn't even moved into the property. So then again, that appraisal will help you, the consumer, understand the value you're getting. Then we're going to look at, we must talk about the process to do this. Typically working with a mortgage broker, assuming you're very reactive and you give the mortgage broker all the paperwork he requires, the bank statements, the credit statements, you should be able to realistically know you will have a mortgage within about 60 to 70 days. One of the important things you should get is a pre-approval based on certain criteria, your income, letter from a CPA. You know that you are able to obtain a mortgage for X amount of dollars. That strengthens your position when you go out to buy that property. So I would allow about a 60-day window for that process from start to finish. Now let's talk about some costs that are associated with buying a property. Typically, and I'm just using as a rule of thumb, if you pay cash for a property in Central Florida, you should allow approximately 2% of the value of the property as your closing costs, or in UK terminology, your legal fees. If you're buying the property with a mortgage, you should allow 4% of the value of the property, because obtaining a mortgage, there are certain document and stamp duties that have to be paid to the Florida government for that mortgage. So again, 2% is a good rule of thumb for a cash buyer, 4% if you're obtaining the property with a mortgage. In shopping around and talking to different mortgage brokers, you want to get an estimated costs of what that mortgage is going to be. A document that they will use is a good faith estimate. That's what you should ask your mortgage broker to provide. That will be a document that will typically explain and show you the costs associated with acquiring the property. There's various different line items in there, like title document stamps, stamp fees that are paid to the government. But a good way of equating it for a UK buyer, when you buy a property in the UK, you will pay your solicitor legal fees. When you close on a property in the US, allow closing costs. And part of those closing costs is the mortgage fees and the broker's fees. But working with a good, reputable broker will give you all those costs. Acquiring a property with a mortgage in the USA, you will actually get your title deeds to the property in about 45 days after the transaction takes place. Typically within 30 days, you'll be electronically up on local county records, but you will actually receive the title deeds to the property. My experience in the UK tells me that typically the bank will hold the title deeds until you make the last payment of the loan. Here in Central Florida, as I said earlier, within 30 to 45 days, you as the owner will receive those title deeds. But the mortgage on your property is recorded in the courthouse. And that way, when you go to refinance your property in the future, the next bank will be able to see the first mortgage that was on the property. It's a question we're regularly asked because I think people living overseas don't understand the fact that you get your title deeds to that property within 30 or 45 days. As well as educating people about mortgages and buying a property with a mortgage, one of the questions we are asked by our UK buyers, will I pay tax in the USA? You own a property, you're generating rental income, yes, you will pay tax. Florida is a very tax effective state to own a property in. So everybody's tax circumstances are different. People are self-employed, people work for a company. So there is no one rule that fits every single person. But let me give you some guidelines with regard to the tax claim that you can make when you own a property here in Florida. If you have a mortgage, the interest that you pay on that loan is tax deductible. You are allowed one trip per year to come and visit the property, check it out, make sure it's in good order, and that is a tax deductible expense. Property in Florida, you're actually allowed to depreciate. You'll take the value of the property, you'll divide it by 27.5, and that will give you a tax deduction every year. It's a depreciation tax deduction. If you have any repairs during the year or any management charges, they are allowable for a tax deduction. And last of all, property taxes. The actual taxes that you pay, which is the equivalent of council tax rates in the UK, they are a deductible expense. I'm just giving you them as a general rule of thumb with regard to tax deductions you should be aware of. The best advice, talk to a CPA, talk to the accountant. He knows every single one of the rules with regard to the IRS. But what I will say to you, you will not pay a lot of tax in Florida with regard to your rental property when you deduct all those deductions.